broadcasting at the 2 p.m. hour from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Welcome to the Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker. There's a lot of news happening today. Coming up after us, you can catch up with the news on either the Matt McNeil Show or Choose Views, or you can head over to am950radio.com or heartlandsignal.com to catch up with all of the different shows that are giving you today's headlines and analysis. For us today, it's our weekly Thinking Clearly, Thinking Queerly episode where we sit down with a guest for the majority of the hour to have them help us think more clearly and more queerly on the major issues of the day facing the queer and allied community. After that, I'll continue my Queer and the Cosmos essay series. Today's guest is David Rephan. David is a partner at Chestnut Cambronne. Based in Minneapolis, Chestnut Cambronne has extensive and unique experience in class action and civil litigation, business reputation, real estate law and litigation, family criminal and personal injury law, amongst many other fields of practice. In David's 25 years of practicing law, he has focused his primarily in the areas of elder law, disability law, including special needs trust law, government benefits law, and veterans law. David is a member of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys and the Minnesota State Bar Association probate and trust law and elder law sections. There are so many credentials that one can have in the legal field. He has also taught at numerous legal and community education seminars and institutions of higher educations. In the interests of full disclosure, David is also my personal attorney. And during our attorney-client conversations, I noticed that David is really, really good at answering my many, many questions and breaking it down in very simple ways, which is, I can see why he was an excellent legal and law instructor, because he's able to break down these very complex situations as simply as they can be made, recognizing some issues are just thorny no matter what. All that being said, then, David, welcome to the Gailey Show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start with the field of elder law. For many LGBTQ folks and allies, they're probably maybe not fully aware of it, and I imagine with the actions of the current administration, it's going to be more relevant than ever. So can you unpack for us, what is this field of law, elder law?
So it is the type of legal issues that an elderly person would face. That's what the elder law attorney focuses on, their practice. And that would include some of the things you mentioned, certainly estate planning, wills and trusts, and powers of attorney. But a real heavy focus for elder lawyers is on helping clients navigate government benefits in order to pay for their care that they need. So Medicaid, which we call medical assistance in Minnesota, Medicare, Social Security disability, some do, Social Security retirement, veterans benefits, food stamps, the list goes on for government programs, but Medicaid planning is the big one for elder lawyers. So, yeah.
And that's the biggest one on the chopping block right now in the big, beautiful bill proposed in Congress.
It is. And it's certainly worrying our clients. So.
I imagine. So, and it's not, I mean, your clients can also be caregivers, right? Or maybe the children or spouses of folks that sort of qualify as older LGBTQ adults.
Yes. So doing an elder law practice is, you have to be comfortable with a family as almost your client. So often if it's an elderly person, their adult children will come into the meetings, and there are, as you can maybe imagine, some family dynamics. Every family has a family, I always say. And that's the challenging and interesting part of it, is everybody cares deeply in their own way for what happens to mom. And they just have different ways of showing it. So, so yeah, and sometimes it's the adult children without the parent if they have power of attorney and the parent really just cannot come to meet with the lawyer for medical reasons. So sometimes we'll just meet with the family members.
So for folks who are like, well, why would I need an attorney for navigating government benefits? Like when should folks be contacting you and saying, ooh, I need help here?
Right. So one moment that you might have, a person might have, is when they're engaging with the government and it's going poorly. So you're banging your head against the wall. You're not getting responses. You're not getting the benefits you need. It's just being sort of denied or inaction or wrong action. So those are kind of key points where someone might want to reach out, because I can become the authorized representative. I go in and kind of do surgery and try to fix what's happening. So that's one point. Another might be where the cost of care is just very expensive. If people are, you can get medical assistance in your own apartment or in your own home, but a lot of people do get it in assisted living residences or nursing homes. And we have clients that are paying in a huge range between $7,000 a month and $18,000 a month. And we have many people at the $12,000 and $13,000 a month. If that's you, then you probably do want to see an elder law attorney, because even if a person has a house and maybe some retirement, if you at those costs, it's going to go in a year or two and you'll have nothing left. And what we work to do is to try to put together a plan to create a nest egg so that there is some money to buy clothing and records. People still use records, and CDs and DVDs and a laptop and an iPad and whatever might make life enjoyable, even in the facility.
Mm-hmm. I just found a whole box of like CDs and I'm like, I literally have no way to play this because I'm like, my laptop doesn't have a CD player. That's neither here nor there. I want to kind of break down into some more specifics, if that's all right, about what your clients are navigating. Do you have an example of a client? Because Medicaid is really, like, a medical assistance, really top of mind for folks right now, considering the cuts that are on the table here. Historically speaking, or generally speaking, for your clients, like if they're having a Medicaid issue, can you give us an example of that? Like what is happening to them and how do you step in and help them?
Yeah. So you might have a married couple where both spouses are still living at home and one spouse has Alzheimer's. And we call them the ill spouse and the well spouse. The well spouse has been caring for the ill spouse, but that ill spouse may get up 10 times during the night. And what often happens is the caregiving spouse can pass away first just from exhaustion. And so it often gets to a point where something has to change. And so that's the point where they might reach out and try to get help from medical assistants to bring caregiving into the home, at least initially. And if that gets to the point where it's so much that that's not doable, then maybe to pay for care in a facility. So, but they're very concerned because they know about all these rules for medical assistance and how much assets, and they're very worried. And that there's a lot of rumors on the street about what they count, what they don't count, what you can do. And so we separate fact from fiction and put together a plan. And often it's plan A and B and C, and they have pros and cons and tax consequences. And we just try to help the client to make an informed decision, really understanding what the rules are, as opposed to hearing it from someone down the street or another person who might have had a run-in with this system 10 years ago. So,
So it is not, I mean, it's proactive and probably recommended to be proactive, as opposed to going through the process, getting denied, and then going, okay, now what?
I think so. I would recommend that. And most of the cases we have is where someone is already paying a high cost of care. We do have some clients who come in and say, I'm in my mid-60s. I have like a cabin in addition to our house that my parents built, and it's just precious to our family and we don't want to lose it. So even though neither of us need care right now, we want to take some steps. We know about the 5-year look back and this issue and that issue. Can you help us? So, but I would say that's under 5%, and 95% are what we call crisis planning, where people are already facing very expensive care and the money is kind of hemorrhaging and they're needing help. So,
what are, generally speaking, like outcomes of this when folks are working with you?
Well, one would be to protect a portion of the estate. kind of a gold standard is if we can protect half the estate, that's pretty good. And when I say protect, it means they can get on medical assistance. And at the same time, there's what I called the nest egg before. There's this money that's set aside and it's available to the person, and they can buy things that medical assistance might not pay for. So protecting assets, protecting the other spouse financially, and also just making sure that they can get the care they need. There's a whole subset of issues where someone is already in a care facility and they might have Alzheimer's and it's not going well. Mm-hmm. And we can litigate if necessary. I don't do as much of the litigation. We have litigators in the office to try to encourage the facility not to evict the person for whatever reasons they're feeling they need to evict him because he yelled at somebody or touched somebody or something. Mm-hmm. So we help people work through those issues as well. So.
We are talking with David Rephan, a partner with Chestnut Cambronne. He practices in the areas of elder law, disability law, government benefits law, and veterans law. I've got about 90 seconds here before the break, and I recognize this is probably a huge question. But generally, sort of an overview, do you see anything that's specific to the LGBTQ community as it relates to elder care law? Or elder law, rather?
Yep. I would say one of the main issues has to do with the power imbalance when someone is in a facility or even getting care at home. And what I mean by that is the caregiver has all the power and the person being cared for doesn't feel like they have a lot of power because they can't stand or they can't sit or they can't use the bathroom. So that's the power imbalance. And if the person who needs care is LGBTQ, then that can lead to the person hiding their identity and their relationships. And that can be tragic, where if they've maybe been out for most of their life and now they have to go back in the closet in order to get proper care. So we do see that issue.
Right. I want to pick it up there, though, because that is something that we see a lot of on this show. We're going to take a short break here, more with David Rephan. When we come back, connect with more progressive news and radio at am950radio.com and heartlandsignal.com. You are listening to The Gailey Show. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm your host, John Parker. It is about 21 minutes after the hour. This is our weekly Thinking Clearly, Thinking Queerly episode, where we sit down with a guest for the majority of the episode to help us think more clearly and more queerly about the major issues of the day facing the queer and allied community. My guest is David Rephan. He is a partner at Chestnut Cambronne. He has successfully litigated class action and individual actions, and he also participated in successful legislative initiatives to increase the rights of persons appealing to the Minnesota Department of Human Services. Area of expertise is around elder law, which is what we're talking about here today, and tangential areas of practice as well. Before the break, we were talking about the impacts or the issues that older LGBTQ adults can be experiencing. David, you were talking about power imbalances. Something that I came across when I was an LGBTQ health educator is that we actually have a population for the first time in history of LGBTQ folks who were out for part of, or the majority of their adult lives, let's say 35 to 55 years old, and now they're retiring and having to deal with a healthcare system that is not necessarily friendly, and they're finding themselves having to go back into the closet in a case-by-case scenario here. You were talking about power imbalance. How does that, is that partially because some folks are just alone? You know what I mean? Like they're unpartnered, or they don't necessarily have kids, or like, is it really just kind of, it doesn't matter who you are, you're just kind of having to deal with these really kind of difficult systems, healthcare systems?
I think it does, in a way, it doesn't matter who you are, because there is a loss of power when you have a loss of physical ability. It just kind of goes with it, and aging and frailty and that when the physical strength goes, the power that you have in relationships and so forth can also go down. I think if you add on to that for LGBTQ folks, the fact that your caregiver may not have experience dealing with LGBTQ people, and they might not be a bad person. They just don't know what to say or what to do, or they are downright hostile. So it could be anything in between. And so that's a really dangerous situation, because you are trusting them to keep you alive. And that's a pretty tough situation. And there is not enough caregivers to go around today. It's just a shortage. And so you're also thinking to yourself, well, I can't be choosy because there aren't enough, and I'm lucky enough to have someone, so I ought to just lump it and I'll go back in the closet, which is not great. There are, fortunately, some new laws in the last few years, at least in Minnesota. If you're in an assisted living and the facility tries to evict you, we have new laws that make it more difficult for that to evict someone. And it slows it down, and it brings in an ombudsman, and you can have a lawyer, and you can have a hearing. And during all of that, you could get at what's really going on. Is the thing that they're saying that's going on really the thing that is why they want to evict? So those are really interesting, and they're cases that I think a person needs a lawyer for.
We are talking with David Rephan, who is a partner with Chestnut Cambronne here in Minneapolis, practices in the areas of elder law, disability law, government benefits law, and veterans law. David, did gay marriage have any impact on elder law as it relates to the queer community?
Yes, definitely. In the respect that before we could get married, we did not have as many options. So, for example, going back to the planning that we do to help people protect their money and their estate if they're needing medical assistance. If you're married, there are all kinds of strategies and asset protection planning options that we use that can only be used for married people. So once we were allowed to get married, we can do the same strategies and employ those options for GLBT folks as well. With that comes some more complexity, right? With options come decisions. And so before we could get married, when I was with my partner and we were not married, if I went into a nursing home, his assets were safe. They would never be able to legally go after his property, his accounts, or anything like that to pay for my care. But if we're married, they can. And so it both gets opportunities and challenges. So being able to get married. So, but I like having the choice.
Yeah. Right. Especially as we have a Supreme Court justice who's asking for a case so that he can overturn gay marriage the first chance that he gets. But I appreciate you saying that, though, because there are also the horror stories we've had of homophobic family members that have come in and said the partner, if one partner just, passes away, they've come in and said, well, the living partner doesn't get to have anything. Like, we're going to take their assets away. Right. And so it's sort of this darned if you do, darned if you don't. That's FCC language that I can't. It's not the language I want to use in describing that. Going in here, again, we're coming into a break and another big question for you. And we can get started here, though, around the new administration, which I know it's only been 5 months, but it feels like it's been 5 years. How has that been for you, navigating all of these changes that seem to be happening like every single day? Is the field, I would say, as an observer from the outside, that the field must be like completely thrown up in the air and who knows what's happening, but is that really what's going on?
I wouldn't say that on the ground it's not chaos. It's going along as it has been. But people are more afraid that the government programs that they assumed would be there when they needed it may not be. And that's new. And it's even new for me. Clients used to say, I mean, do you think medical assistance and Medicaid will be there? And I always did. And I do think for seniors, for elderly, it will be there. I think they have a lot of lobbying power through ARP and other organizations. They're just a pretty powerful segment of society in their lobbying power. I would say people with disabilities who are under 65 have less clout and less lobbying power. And so I think some of the cuts and hits might affect them more than the elderly, but we don't know yet. So, yeah.
If you are listening to this and thinking you would like to discuss more about elder law, there is a website, NAELA.org, the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. It is a free database. You can go in, you can put your zip code, and the site provides you with a list of elder law attorneys in your city. NAELA.org. We've included a link in the show notes and on our website. We've got to fit in a break here. Listen to our sponsors, buy with them, shop with them, do business with them. They keep this type of radio, progressive news and radio, on the air. Tell them you heard about them on The Gailey Show right here on AM 950, KTNF, or WCPT 820. From the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, in the 2 p.m. hour, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm your host, John Parker, about 33 minutes past the hour. It's our weekly Thinking Clearly, Thinking Queerly episode, where we sit down with a guest for the episode, the majority of the episode, to talk about the major issues of the day facing the queer and allied community. With me is David Rephan. David is a partner at Chestnut Cambronne. Based in Minneapolis, Chestnut Cambronne has extensive and unique experience in a variety of fields of law, including class action and civil litigation, family, criminal, and personal injury laws, and others. David's 25 years of practicing law is primarily in the fields of elder law, disability law, government benefits law, and veterans law. Also taught at numerous legal and community education seminars and in higher educations. Again, in full interest, David is my own personal attorney, so just like to get that out there. You were mentioning before the break, David, about the political power of seniors. I have personally been wondering, when is that going to come into play here? Because there's so much that's happening at the federal level that's like, how is this even moving forward, giving the largest voting bloc and the lobbying power that I perceive on the outside of older Americans? Can you talk about that political power that seniors do and in other instances don't have?
I'm not a political expert. This is just seat of my pants from what I see. And it seems like when the House was struggling to pass their bill that they just passed, that they had a lot of difficulty getting the Medicaid changes passed because even Republican House members did not want Medicaid, especially for seniors, to be changed. And so I think maybe everyone, especially Republicans who are in a vulnerable district, that's not a comfortable place for them to be. And so you saw different options about trying to change it while not changing, or make it look like it's not changed, and it is being changed. So, and of course the Senate will have a different view on all of it. So I'm not sure it's, well, we don't know what's going to happen yet, but the way it's affecting clients is they want to come in now and talk and assume that, in a way, work from the position, assuming that the program is maybe not there. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example. If an elderly parent has an adult child with a disability who's 50 years old, and the parent is making their will, and they have 3 children, and one of the children has the disability, and they always felt that either they would divide it equally, their estate, between the 3 children, but no matter what, Medicaid would be there and it would continue to cover that and help that child. They're coming in now and saying, no, I don't know if that program is going to be there when I die. And so I may actually tilt the scale toward the child with the disability, because the actual cost of the care is like $100,000 to $150,000 a year. And if the government does pull back or end the program, I want to make sure my child with a disability will be okay, because the other children are working and they're doing fine financially. And we're seeing that a number of times.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big change.
Yeah, huge change. And that was a prelude to the question of, okay, Democratic, Republican, progressive government, whichever, what would you like to see happen at a federal level or even a state level for your clients? Like, how would you like to see elder law amended and moved forward in the future?
One area would be to have national long-term care insurance. When the Affordable Care Act was being debated in Congress, it had a piece that had national long-term care insurance. That was dropped, I think, in order to get the votes to pass the Affordable Care Act. And I would love to see that back. The system is not really sustainable without national long-term care insurance, I don't think. So that would,
what does that mean?
Well, it would mean that it might be along the lines of, there's about 2 or 3 states, I believe, like Oregon, I think, that have and I may be wrong, it may be at the city level, where a small amount is taken out of your paycheck every month, $30, $50, and not that that's insignificant. And in return for that, if you need nursing home care or care in your home, you get it.
Mm.
And so you don't have to do the type of hoop jumping that we're talking about, or that I help people with. And you don't even necessarily need the Medicaid program to be there, because they're going to take that money, invest it, and have money available to pay for care. The other would be, so it could be along those lines. So, yeah.
Got it.
I would also, I'm sorry.
No, go for it. Yeah, I want to hear.
I would also love to see, and it is happening, but it's happening slowly, a much more increased effort to provide medical assistance services in a person's own home without having to go to an assisted living or nursing home. Again, it is swinging in that direction, but it's swinging kind of slowly. And caregivers, the adult children and the spouses are bearing the brunt of that slow progression. And if we could ease that burden in a quicker way, I think that would be wonderful. People want to be cared for and stay at home, and arguably might get even better care. You could debate both sides, but that's what people want. But so I would love to see. Right now, we already have where we can help a person get on medical assistance, and they can pay their adult child to care for them at home, or a neighbor, or a friend, or a sibling. And we do have that, but it's not perfect. And I would love to see it work even better. And it's understaffed. That's another issue. And then the last would be, I would love to see, right now there is something called a state recovery after a person gets medical assistance. So if I'm in a nursing home and I have a spouse and we have a home and I get medical assistance, after we both die, the state can come back and take that home. That's called a state recovery, and that's federal law. And there is a bill in Congress that's been sitting there for probably a couple of years to change that. But some states that have a lot of political clout, like California, do not go after the home. They'll go after financial accounts to pay themselves back, but they leave the home because it's seen as regressive, especially if this is the first generation where a family has been able to afford a home, and there's multiple family members maybe needing a place to live, cousins and siblings, and you're going to take that home away, and that just creates a cycle of poverty. And so I'd love to see that bill passed.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with David Rephan, a partner at Chestnut Cambronne. He practices in the areas of elder law, disability law, government benefits law, and veterans law. David, as our listeners are sitting here listening to your expertise and they're going, maybe I should talk to someone right now and be proactive. So I'm going to go and I'm going to find an elder law attorney. What would be the first things that they should do? Would it be power of attorney, medical power of attorney? What would the first proactive steps be?
I think a financial power of attorney is probably the first step, because it's not an expensive project for an attorney to help you with, and I don't recommend doing it online with a form, because there are choices that have to be made, and those online forms don't explain that well enough. I'll give you an example. There is a question on powers of attorney whether the person that you're appointing to handle your financial affairs, if you're incapacitated, whether they can take your money out of your account and put it in their account. So that's called self-dealing. Why would you want that? It sounds pretty heavy, but on the other hand, let's say that I have or I have a child and I'm single, and I have $50,000 to my name, and I'm in a nursing home, and it's going to go in 3 or 4 months. And that child comes to an elder lawyer and says, could I do something? And the elder lawyer says, well, show me your power of attorney. And the elder lawyer looks at it to see whether that child can take money from the parent's account. If they can, we can do some of those strategies that we were talking about to maybe protect half of that estate, so that that elderly person is better protected. But that's a very serious and that's very powerful authority. So you don't want it in the wrong hands, but it can also be good. So how do you have that kind of a legal discussion? By looking up a form on Zoom. I think that's just one example of the things that we see done, maybe not in the client's best interest. So I think a financial power of attorney would be the first step, because without it, you have to go to court and get a conservatorship if you're incapacitated. That can be $5,000 or $10,000, and then you can't do the type of planning I've been talking about. Courts generally don't allow it. The will, if you don't have it, the state has laws that will say where your estate goes to, and a lot of times it's where people want it to go anyway. So not I think people ought to have a will, but if you're asking, which is the priority, I would say that financial power of attorney.
And if there are folks right now that are on medical assistance or Medicaid, or they're about to be, or they have a child that is, what would be your recommendations right now for what their next step should be, given we don't know what's about to happen at the federal level?
I would say if they want to, they should reach out and maybe sit down with an elder law attorney, elder and disability attorney. A lot of, not all, but a lot of elder lawyers give a free initial consultation. We do in our office, and that way there's no risk. You sit down and you just see, is there even anything wrong, right? Do I need to fix something, or is there something that I could be doing better? Or I really don't understand this program, how it works with this one. Could you explain? And so I think that might be a good first step, because you'll learn what you don't know. So.
And this is why I wanted to have you on the show. Because you're able to break all of these things down. And I know there is this temptation for folks. I know I have done it with an LLC where I've gone to LegalZoom and I'm like, start a business for me, LegalZoom, go and do it. But as I've learned more about this field of law, and particularly in conversations with you, I'm like, oh, that is not, I wouldn't even know how to even begin to understand the questions that are being asked of me on those forms. It's one thing to just, okay, here's the name of my business, here's my address, okay, go create the articles of incorporation. But this seems to be so much more complex.
Yeah. And there's a lot of ramifications to what choices you make, and people don't really, you don't know what you don't know. So yeah, I agree with that. I agree.
Thank you so much, David, for joining me here today on The Gailey Show.
Oh, this was great. You asked great questions, John. Thank you.
Friend of the show, obviously. So you're welcome back. And I may be following up with you, depending on how the laws go. If you are thinking, or if you're listening to this rather, and thinking that you would like to discuss more about elder law, there is that website, naela.org, the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. So if you're in Minnesota, outside the Twin Cities, if you are in Chicago, it is a free database. You put in your zip code, and the site provides you with a list of elder law attorneys in your area. naela.org. We've included a link in the show notes and on our website. If you're in the Twin Cities and you just love this conversation with David, you can connect with him through the Chestnut Cambronne website. It's chestnutcambronne.com. Chestnut, CAMBRONNE.com. We've included a link to this in our show notes and on our website, so you can just go to am950radio.com or heartlandsignal.com. Look for today's episode from May 29th, and you'll find all of that information. We are going to fit in one final break. When we come back, I'm going to continue my Queer and the Cosmos essay series. So one last time to find out our sponsors, support them, help them out, because they help us out and keep conversations like this on the air. More to come. You're listening to The Gailey Show. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker. We're coming up on the top of the hour. At the end of every Thinking Queerly episode, I read from a weekly essay series I write called A Queer in the Cosmos, an opportunity to understand queer life through the exploration of the cosmos. Here is the latest essay, Light Year 14, Starlight, Star Not Very Bright, Part 2. In last week's essay, I talked about streetlights, the circumstances of my youth without them in Leelanau County, Michigan, and with them in Valence, France. Streetlights block us from the universe. For the first time in human history, hundreds of millions of us live under light pollution, which nearly completely cuts us off from seeing the stars and the Milky Way. A primary argument for and for increased street lighting is crime. This presents a conundrum for queer folks. We flock to cities to find our people, to find organizations and bars and services that support us. But we also are more likely to face hate crimes in cities. The data is tricky because rural communities and MAGA states refuse to track hate crime data against LGBTQ people in their jurisdictions. So from the data we have actually seen increases in hate crimes in cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, and Austin, Texas over the past few years. Part of this is due to increased population in those areas, more people, more opportunity for crime. There is little data comparing the rates of crime between cities and rural area. There is a general belief, though persistent, a stereotype, that cities are safer for queer folks. Incomplete data challenges that. Last week, I briefly covered the argument that streetlights reduce, even prevent crime, and the brighter, the better in terms of streetlights, looking at arguments from St. Paul, Minnesota, the U.S. Department of Justice, and Newark, New Jersey. Last week, I also briefly looked at research that counters these claims. Street lighting is not the panacea we think it is. Some studies show that in certain cases, it literally has no impact at reducing crime. Others say that it can help reduce property crimes, but not interpersonal crimes. And the queer community faces both vandalism of our spaces and assaults against our bodies. But beyond a mixed track record on actually protecting the queer community, light pollution poses health risks. For real. There is emerging research about how light pollution leads to sleep loss, increased stress, and changes to our circadian rhythms that can result in altered hormone production. There was a report, a couple of reports that I want to actually quote from. The first one, the American Medical Association. They wrote in a research, it is estimated that white LED lamps have 5 times greater impact on circadian sleep rhythms than conventional street lamps. Recent large surveys found that brighter residential nighttime lighting is associated with reduced sleep times, dissatisfaction with sleep quality, excessive sleepiness, and impaired daytime functioning and obesity. That was from the American Medical Association. According to a 2023 paper by 8 physicians and researchers published in Science, which is from the American Aging Association, quote from that publication, there is an increasing number of research underlying the complexity of the correlation between light pollution and Alzheimer's disease. However, additional studies, they note, to enhance the key tenets are required for a better understanding of this relationship. Interestingly, maybe weirdly, the glare from certain types of outdoor lighting can actually reduce your ability to see contrasts, which increases your danger of seeing oncoming cars. Additionally, it is necessary to mention that light pollution, especially lighting up buildings when no one is even there, consumes huge and unnecessary energy, which increases climate change. Additionally, wildlife habitats around and in cities and suburbs have been significantly impacted by light pollution. Birds and sea turtles have been the most studied, with sea turtles actually having to move from areas that they have previously laid their eggs. All of the street lights have forced them to go to areas that they believe are darker or more conducive to laying their eggs, which actually makes them going across roads and getting hit by cars or going into places they think are safe but aren't actually safe. With birds, it is related to migration patterns and also striking windows and more. So there are benefits to turning off the lights. But for queer folks, is there something beyond that? When we look up at Vega, the 5th brightest star in our neighborhood of the universe, when we see the lights of the Milky Way, when we trace the stars of the Hercules constellation, or observe the nebula under Orion's belt, does that offer us something more than health? Our ancestors had deep connections to the night sky, be it spiritual or mystical or both. Through science, those connections may have evolved. There is still wonder, and there are still folks that prescribe to spirituality and mysticism when connecting to the cosmos. Can we experience, though, as queer folks, a sense of calm, a feeling of belonging? Now, I could argue, yes, obviously. I read a series called Queer in the Cosmos, but I think we should explore turning off the lights. And this could even be turning off the lights on skyscrapers and buildings to save the energy and reduce climate change, but also using things like smart street lighting that turn on when there's motion and things are, you're either walking on the sidewalk or you're driving through an area, but then turn off again when there's no one actually in that space. I think we should explore turning off the lights together and looking up at the sky to see what that does, though, for our community. That is all for us today. Thank you, everyone, for listening and or watching. You can check out all of our episodes on am950radio.com or heartlandsignal.com. You can stream us everywhere you get your podcast or on our YouTube channel. Connect with us on Blue Sky. We are at thegaleyshow.org. In Minnesota, coming up next is the Matt McNeil Show on WCPT. It is Choose Views. And until tomorrow, keep it queer, America.